Just a few reminders. If you're new to Zoom, if you can't hear us, hopefully you can see us and be clicking on and checking those audio settings. We heard last month that folks were just thrilled about the change and found Zoom easier to use and interact with. One of the things we ask is that if you are a panelist and you're not speaking at this point in time, please mute yourself so we can't hear your phone and other devices. Other panelists, other attendees are muted. You can use the chat or raise your hand to speak and we'll get you in because we really do want to make this a conversation among all of us. All of today's resources are linked in the emails that you received before and after the meeting. And also there's a community meeting folder where all of the resources live so that you can use them again and again back at your own site, hopefully turn the resources around. As we get started, we just want to let you know roughly our format. You've been officially welcomed. We do a brief, real quick update on a few new things and then jump into learning from everybody in the group. And then finish with a highlight of some things that are next. This month we have a lot of stories and examples that you're going to be able to use in your own work that relate to sustainability. And I know for many of you who are 4 to 5 years into the LDC work that is something you're having ongoing conversations about. The other thing, just to get you thinking, is I've had a couple of requests to just talk about how are you locally recognizing and celebrating teachers in schools? LDC is an investment of time and brain sweat. You're going to need to mute some folks. Then you may want to mute everybody right now. Great. It really is an investment of time and energy for folks. So how do we encourage people? How do we help keep that momentum going? Basically make your local people famous. So we want to hear some of your ideas today. And again, several people have talked about that as we're heading into March, thinking about that last leg of the year. So as we kind of talk through and take a look here at the agenda, you received every month a 2-page summary of update that just has highlights, things you missed, things you should know about. We often talk about the training story if you don't want to stand up in front of the screen and realize something changed overnight that you needed to know. One of the biggies is that the Battelle collection is out. We're hearing lots of great things as schools are using these resources. They're all here for you. Also, just a reminder of the standards picker in Core Tools. So lots of detail here. One of the other things that we're really excited about that you'll hear more about in April and May, is our desire to really produce through LDC an adaptive, personalized, professional development experience that also is competency-based, that we can show that we're helping teachers develop skills that are really going to translate into the classroom and help them grow in their practice. The LDC courses, initially, our fledgling offering are Moodle courses, and we really work to marry LDC and Core Tools, but what we're working on now is to figure out how we can truly have this vision of adaptive PD, where you need it, when you need it. So there's a little bit of information here about that for you to check out, and we'll be talking more about that as we have examples. So anyway, summary of updates, just wanted to kind of have that. The other thing that I've been getting requests for as folks are updating websites and training materials is, can I add a Join Core Tools button to my website? Can I make it really easy that, hey, folks are going to the CEI website, the IU13 website, how can I do that? Just like you've added Twitter feeds and those kinds of things. So there's a link there for you so that you can do that right on your own website to just make it easier for your users to get right in. I'd like to really just dive right in here, and I'm just going to go a little bit out of order. I believe Kelly Galbraith has to exit where she's at pretty soon. But today what we'd like to do is just talk a little bit about sustaining LDC with 3 different organizations. I'm going to turn it over first to Kelly Galbraith, who has really been on a peer review journey over the last few years and is taking that next step with the work. Kelly, I'm going to pull up the slides. Are you able to unmute, and are you good to go?
Hi, Barb. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Hi, everybody. So I have been working with a regional team of peer reviewers at IU13 to jury or peer review teachers' first modules as part of our professional development. And this has been an interesting journey. This is our first experience with our own IU13 winter peer review event. And what I can say is that we've had a total of 18 modules come in from our teachers. And we have provided feedback to all of them. We have 12 peer reviewers who have gone through the national peer review training that LDC offers, mostly with Barb and Suzanne. And they have been independently reviewing teachers' modules. Through this process, we've learned some lessons, and we're still learning. We're not done yet. So of the 18 modules that were submitted to us for review, 12 of them have been returned to the module authors, and 6 of them are still out being revised, or the reviewers are still working. So in terms of successes, we're providing custom peer feedback to module authors on their very first modules, which we hope is deepening their professional development with LDC. Many times in our training, we don't go into the nitty-gritty of what goes where within core tools. So providing the written feedback to the teachers is very helpful. For every review that comes in our peer review, I backread all of the feedback from the reviewer, all of the bubble comments and the rubric comments. And after I backread, I write an email to every peer reviewer on the team with revisions, like kudos, here are the strengths of your review, here's what I really like about what you did. Here are some places where I'd like to see revisions on your review before they're returned to the module authors. Because the peer reviewers are not certified jurors yet, they're working toward that, they have found the feedback to be very helpful. So we're trying to establish LDC teacher leaders in our school districts, and that's many of the peer reviewers that we have are teachers or our reading supervisors. And for every peer review, I am sending the building administrator a summary report of the feedback that went to their teachers so that they can see where their teachers stand with implementation and with design of their first modules. Some things we're learning. Individual peer reviewers don't always feel prepared to review independently. You know, nationally we have everything double scored, and we come to consensus. From a regional standpoint, you know, looking at funding, I'm paying all of the peer reviewers for their time because many of these folks are teachers. So I'm paying each peer reviewer $45 a module because I'm anticipating it will take them about 90 minutes. So in terms of the budget, it's not sustainable to pay all the reviewers to double score every module when we're looking at formative reviews. It's been a challenge to allow time for back reading for me to schedule time to back read every reviewer's review and then type feedback for every reviewer. But I'm hearing from the reviewers that they're finding that feedback really helpful. And then another great thing that we learned through this process is that you can actually peer review modules without scoring on the rubric. So that has been a positive for our peer reviewers, especially since they are reviewing teachers' first modules. And if the module overall is work in progress, we don't want to deflate those teachers by scoring it on the rubric. We're finding that we're just providing written feedback on the modules to help them improve their work. And I don't know if Abby Mahaffey has been able to sign on yet. One of the peer reviewers, she may be able to sign. Oh, there she is. I just saw her. It's good timing. Abby Mahaffey is one of the peer reviewers on the team. And we asked her if she would just sign on and talk a little bit about her experience. And so I don't know if she's connected by audio, but Abby, perfect timing. You're up if you're on.
I think I'm connected. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sounds great, Abby.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for having me today. I did really enjoy the peer review through Kelly and IU13. I've done the national jurying. So this was a nice way to become more comfortable with the whole process and be able to provide feedback that goes to local teachers, which I think was also helpful. The feedback that I received from Kelly, I thought was probably the most beneficial because I've done some reviewing with people, which is obviously great, but this was nice to be able to get feedback on the types of comments that I could be making and the things that were helpful to say and the types of feedback that teachers can use to then make it better. I think the focus was a little bit different because it was on improving a module for local teachers.
Yeah, and I would just have to say that Abby did an outstanding job. So I know that Abby was asked to revise one of the modules that she reviewed, but I also in this process ended up reassigning a module for 2 reviewers, one module, and Abby was one of them, so that another reviewer would feel more comfortable reviewing. So I know that was really positive.
Mm-hmm. And that was good conversation that we had. It was a colleague of mine, so we were able to sit down together and go through everything and have a lot of good discussion for ourselves as well about the whole process and about teachers and work and LDC in general. So,
yeah.
You know.
I'd just like to open it up to the group for questions, for discussion while we have Kelly and Abby.
I see the question from Suzanne. It's to Kelly about the professional development support for coaches on the back reading side. And I think that was my favorite part of the whole process too, was getting that feedback. And it was professional development for me, which I feel like I do a lot of that for teachers. So this was my way of getting better at what I'm trying to do to be able to help teachers.
Yeah, I'm reading actually Suzanne's comments, everybody, and just really thinking about like how do we build regional peer review or local peer review. And so in my case, we're a regional support agency. And so I want to build capacity in our districts to lead the LDC work within our districts and within our buildings. But how do I increase that capacity for at least 1 or 2 people within that district to be able to review their own modules in-house? And then another question really is just allotting the time as the person leading this for myself to back read and give feedback and type the feedback. I mean, when you look at the scheme of things, 18 modules doesn't seem like a lot, but when you start accounting for the time that goes into like the back reading, the typing the feedback to the reviewer, Rob Kantner has been instrumental in helping me send modules back to peer reviewers for revisions because that feature is not yet built into Core Tools, so I can't quite kick it back with the revision suggestions. Rob has had to do that for me. Yeah. So I'm seeing another question. It's actually 90 minutes. I left every reviewer to provide initial feedback. And I based the 90 minutes on doing a full module peer review on my own experience, just how long it took me when I first started to write really thorough feedback to help teachers improve their work. So,
Kelly, what's your long-term plan for the peer review model? I mean, just from, again, working with you personally, I know that a year ago, you were the juror who was doing all of this, and you were building it into the price of your services to school districts, and saw this vision, this capacity building vision. And now, how are you funding this peer review event? And then long-term, you know, how are you thinking about funding and incentivizing this work?
So right now, every one of the schools that works with IU13 for professional development gets and pays for upfront 2 full days of on-site support or technical assistance. And the way that I am funding the current peer review is that principals can choose the peer review team as one way where they can use part of their 2 days of time that they've already paid for. And, you know, Barb kind of helped me think through this to be realistic. I mean, I'm thinking about what I would be paid with my salary hourly, right? In comparison to paying what I pay a teacher. I mean, we pay curriculum rate for a teacher, which would be $30 an hour. So if I budget 90 minutes per module for a teacher to review and pay each teacher $45 a module, it's actually working out to be more effective, efficient, and cost-effective to do the peer reviews that way. In the future, it will still be part of the technical assistance. It will be one of the choices for principals and for teachers. And I also have developed a new menu of services for our districts that includes peer review either just with the task or with the module as a separate cost. People can pay to participate in this as a service. I have not tried that yet. I'm trying it next year. So we'll see if it's something that takes off. Last year and this year, I have had one school district whose central office administration did not want teachers implementing tasks and modules that were not good to go. And so the directive from the central office was that all teachers who had designed modules had to work with me to peer review their tasks until they were good to go. And this is a district who has instructional coaches employed in the district. So the instructional coaches took on the responsibility of coaching teachers with the instructional ladder. But my role was to look for alignment, centrality to the discipline, and actually review all the tasks with the teachers until they were good to go for implementation in the classroom. And so that was a service that the school district actually paid for.
Other questions for Kelly and for Abby going through this experience as a school-based coach? One of the ones I see here is putting out, how do you build in protected time? That might be a great question too for Abby. How are you spending time? You know, if we value quality, you know, we've all been in sit and get professional development. It's like we've covered it, you know. I've done LDC, but really what I'm hearing is, again, the importance of the quality of the assignments we put in front of kids and spending time in making the investment to help teachers be able to build better assignments and to do that work. So Abby, could you talk a little bit about how you guys are finding time to do some of this work, and Kelly as well, and anybody else who's on this call? There's a lot of these kinds of things going in process.
Time within our district.
Mm-hmm.
We've had to get creative because we don't have a lot of in-service days. So we have done a lot of it during department meetings at the high school level, team meetings at the middle school level, and then we have some time at the end of the day that's, the kids are gone, but the teachers are still there. So we've done some optional type things. We've also done summer trade days as part of in-service to have teachers come in and work on modules with me, with Lisa Hollenbach, with some administrators. So we've tried to find sort of ways around using in-service days because we don't have that time. And then through coaching time, through plan period, that's not the most popular one for teachers, so.
And I would just chime in that all of the peer reviewers who are on the team this year did this outside of their regular day. Like, I paid them outside of their day to do this work.
And Kelly, am I accurate that you used grant funds?
We have the current Striving Readers grant for Pennsylvania, Keystones to Opportunity. And so part of the work in Pennsylvania for Striving Readers is implementing LDC, at least at the task level. And so some of the grant funds that we have were used to further the work to help try to build this regional peer review system. Yes, that's true.
Sometimes being able to seed something that way with federal programs dollars, because as you mentioned, it really is strong professional development. As you are looking to build the time in your infrastructure in a permanent way, as Abby's talking about, where are the places we are finding this begins to help. I'd just like to thank both of you. I know that you're both busy out in schools. I also wanted to say to everybody on the call who's in this process in one way or another, we're happy to help support you. Please feel free to reach out to Rob Cantner or to myself. And really just set up a conversation to talk a little bit about your goals. And when I look at the names on this list, some of you have been on this journey for several years, attending yourself, building your own skills, and then beginning to think to how to build a state and regional system. So thank you guys. And ironically, next we're going to hear about from Colorado, who has been working also on building local jurying systems, and one of their new ventures has been to have a state partner convening modeled after last year's LDC convening, but taking it and making it so much better and local. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy Spicer and to Jayla Wachi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Great. Do I have control? I don't think I do.
I think you can. Do you want me to stop sharing and you share so you can drive? Or do you want me to drive?
I'll just tell you when to switch the slide.
Okay. I'm pretty responsive. You just move me on.
And Zayla and I are not in the same room, so she's going to take over at some point, and we'll just figure it out as we go.
Okay, sounds
Hi, thank you for having us talk about this today. We just a couple of weeks ago had our very first LDC state partner convening, February 8th and 9th. And when I put these slides together, what I didn't do was put a slide for why we decided to do this. We believe very strongly in our organization that networking helps accelerate innovation across the state. And we have a ton of districts out there doing LDC all in different ways. And we really wanted to get people together into a room to learn from each other and think about how they might implement differently or accelerate what they were doing. So we modeled it after LDC.org's National Partner Convening, as Barb said, which was a day and a half in June. The timing was really important for us to have it in February because districts are currently planning for what they're going to do next year. They're doing budgeting planning and programming planning. So we felt like this was a really good time to get people together to start thinking about how they might do things differently next year. We had, no, not yet. Go back. We had 104 attendees from across the state. 15 districts and teams. We had some people from higher ed, some partner organizations, and the Colorado Department of Education, and we had people in the room that hadn't yet begun their journey, all the way to people that were in the very first cohort 5 years ago. You can go ahead and switch. There we go. So in planning for a state partner convening, we had a lot of conversations with LDC.org to talk about how they went about planning their national partner convening, what their lessons learned were, what suggestions they had for us. I had a great one-on-one meeting with Barb and then some phone calls with Suzanne and Rob, who both came and helped support us, and Jen came and helped support us also, which was phenomenal. We developed the theme of growing and sustaining because we wanted districts to learn from each other about how they can grow the work they're doing and how they can sustain their efforts and how they can work together to do that across districts. We required that districts sign up as a team. We recommended 10 people, and we made a requirement that practicing teachers had to be on the team. So we had mostly teams that were districts and teachers. Where we missed the boat was not requiring that principals came, which we will be doing next year, because building leadership is also very important. We provided hotel rooms for people. That was a really important networking thing that we did that we heard was very appreciated. We intentionally included a lot of talking time. So every time we did something, we gave a chance for the tables to talk about what they'd heard and come up with questions. And we highlighted a lot of the innovative models that are happening across the state. Our social media was awesome. You can see the talk bubbles in the pictures. Jayla made those. We had a couple of hashtags, and LDC with CEI was actually trending nationally at one point on Twitter. So that was really fun. People had a lot of fun with that. We did lightning rounds like LDC National did. We had, the first day we had 3 of our large urban school districts, Adams 12, Jeff Cohen, Denver Public Schools. They each did a 7-minute lightning round talking about their model. And then we brought them all up for a panel. You can see the picture in the middle. On the second day, we did more with our smaller. So we had our San Juan Bossies, which is a rural collection of districts, and Kimba, who is from basically a 1-building K-12 school district. Talk about her experiences. Go ahead and switch. Another thing we did was we had a study done about Colorado's LDC network and community. We did that in partnership with Slope Research and presented our findings during the convening. We found that, get my notes. We asked more than 2,500 educators across Colorado, which is basically our community at this point, to identify up to 7 educators that they communicate and collaborate with. We had 547 responses and learned from that that experience matters and collaboration matters. And the more you collaborate and the more experience you have, the more likely you are to go deeper into LDC. We also, a strong suggestion out of that was every opportunity to increase connections we should do both within district and outside of district. This picture here is a picture of the social network of Colorado LDC. So all of those dots are educators, and they're connected to all the other educators that they talk to. So that was very good as well. Through all of this, we heard a theme that what successful implementation and scaling requires is infrastructure at the district level combined with a real grassroots movement at the teacher level. Without both of those things, it doesn't have the likelihood of expanding and scaling the way that we would love for it to always do.
Amy, I'm going to just
talk about design thinking session that we did on the second day, which people absolutely loved.
Amy, I'm going to pause just for a second because this is a lot of great information to digest, and have us check the chat and also open it up to anybody who has some questions right now before we continue. You've already given us so much to think about. I want to make sure that people that are that want to have that quick chance? Anyone? Okay, keep going then. I broke the flow for no reason. I shouldn't have done that. All right.
Okay, I think it's my turn. Are you heading out, Amy? Amy has another call. Are you going to be with us for a couple minutes for questions? Or?
I'll be for a couple minutes and then I'll have to head out.
Okay, so on the second day, the second half of the second day, what we did is a design thinking session, which was a collaborative effort with our next generation learning team within CEI, who facilitate this protocol where people essentially just work through a problem of practice, and you use all the capital of having all those great brains in one room at one time. And so we typically in design thinking sessions, it revolves around a client. Well, ours did as well, but what we did was Amy and I talked about reoccurring problems of practice that we had heard throughout Colorado throughout the years, and kind of synthesize those into a couple of questions. How might we statements? And we then identified people to act as clients, and then the clients would take on those problems of practice and describe how they're relevant in their district and how it's relevant to them. On this slide here, this is the really basic protocol overview of the protocol that we use, which I can also, should be available on the resources page for this call, because I sent that to them as well. It's a really great protocol. You start out with a client. The client describes their problem. All of the people who are in the room then interview and interact with the client, asking questions just to clarify. And then everybody works together to come up with ideas for possible solutions. And then they take solutions, like central themes around those solutions, and build them out into full-on prototypes. And so it's different than a lot of meetings that we have when we discuss problems of practice, where we often end with a lot of ideas and haven't really fully blown out how to prototype that or how we might actually implement it. And so design thinking is really great for that, because you end with this prototype, and then the client can go home with these sample prototypes that will help them hopefully solve the problem of practice that they came to the table with that day. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a little example of a team presenting their prototype. So then each team, after they develop a prototype, they present it to the group and talk about it, and people can discuss, they can add ideas to it and discuss it. You can go to the next slide as well. So here are the questions that we came up with for the problems of practice that the sessions revolved around. And so what we did, there's 4 questions here. We had 4 breakout rooms, 4 facilitators per room to facilitate the protocol that is in the Google folder for this call. And we identify these, as I said, by just sort of, and I'm sure all of you can probably identify with these yourself in your own areas and districts. And so we had 4 rooms, 4 problems of practice, 4 clients. People went in, problem solved, prototyped, and they came back into the general session so invigorated. And the clients, who were mostly districts, and well, we're all districts and BOCES, were so grateful to have a meeting of the minds in that way to focus on just their problem that they have been facing. And it was really, really good. We had a lot of requests for the protocol afterwards as well. So this could be a really good way for people to, address common problems of practice in their area, or even just in their own offices, amongst their own staff. I think, go to the next. I think that was the end. Oh, here's some of the feedback. This is some of the feedback that we got from clients, or not clients, I'm sorry, from participants at the convening. I think people were really appreciative. I mean, based on the social media feedback, the feedback from the actual form that we sent out, people were really invigorated. They got a lot of ideas from each other. The problems of practice helped them work through stuff. People who were there as year zero, people who hadn't even implemented yet, as you can see in this third quote here, found it very valuable to learn from everyone along the way. So overall, it was a success, and I think we reached many of the goals that we were trying to get at with the creation of the convening. Amy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, there were a couple of questions that I saw pop up. One was, repeat what I said about infrastructure at the district level. What I was referring to there was we have found that in order for LDC to kind of take fire in a district, needs to be some structures and systems in place at the district level that are supportive of it. And you also need to have a really quality product that teachers are spreading by word of mouth. So without the grassroots and the supportive district, it's not going to become systemic. There was another question about if one of the how might we's was about teacher evaluation. Does the fourth question refer to teacher evaluation? It did. And interestingly, we had people sign up for which question they wanted to tackle. And I don't think we ended up running that one. Did we, Jayla?
No, actually, you're right. We didn't do that last one. We actually only had 2 people sign up for that, which to me really blew my mind, because I've definitely seen many people tackling that same problem of practice in their districts, but only 2 people signed up for that session. So we ended up just folding them into the other ones.
Interesting. Any other questions or conversation? I think this offers a really nice model. And I know when I have models like this, it accelerates what I can do. And so we really appreciate you sharing this, and know that you'll be really our whole group is like an ecosystem where we can really reach out and contact each other and feed off of each other. So as you folks are planning and thinking about working your networks over the next year, this is just a great example. I also think the timing, Amy, as you talked about, was really interesting. Like now, you know, Kelly's updated her PD catalog as districts are getting ready to make decisions for next year. You timed this in-person event to be at that peak time to really help people reflect on what they're doing, to think about doing some things differently, and about what they needed. So it's one of the things we're always struggling and thinking about is when is the best time for some of these things also.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, it was almost a happy accident. I wasn't thinking, when we picked that date in October, it wasn't as intentional as it ended up like working out to be. And I was absolutely thrilled with how the timing worked out and how districts were all at the right place. They'd had enough under their belts of the school year. They're looking to next school year, and it couldn't have been better timing, except that it was the day after the Super Bowl when the Denver Broncos won.
Yeah. And still everyone showed up.
Everyone still showed up and had smiles on their faces. So it was perfect.
Yeah, I did think about that. And I think for folks too, we tend to have summer events, and so I think that's something too, just to kind of call out. So as everybody's here on the call, we're just seeing different ways to really go at this growing, sustaining issue. And I'd like to turn to Kelly Philbeck and to Robin Hebert to talk a little bit about what Kentucky has masterfully done. As you folks are looking at who can help you with what, I think of LDC as this big ecosystem where we're horse trading expertise. These folks really know how to build LDC into the framework, so it's not an add-on in Kentucky. And with that, I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Hi, Barb. It's Kelly, and I'm here with Robin Hebert. We're just kind of sharing a screen, so we'll both be talking to you today, and Robin will start sort of explaining some of the background about our novice reduction plan.
Okay, so Barb, if you're going to, there we go. If you're going to advance slides, we want to go ahead, and I'll just give a little bit of context for the novice reduction work in Kentucky. When our previous commissioner, Dr. Holliday, was here, one of the priorities of his tenure here was to really think about and improve our novice reduction and gap closure efforts. We have, as I'm sure many other states do, lots of legislation and lots of conversation around how to reduce novice and or close achievement gaps. But Dr. Holliday really took that to heart at the end of his time here in Kentucky and assembled a team at KDE that was a cross-agency team, and I'm sure that you all can relate to how some state agencies don't always work well across the agency. In Kentucky, we call it different offices, but this effort was a cross-agency initiative to really go after novice reduction and close achievement gaps. And so the team that was first assembled to work on this project really just gave a lot of thought to what resources do we have in Kentucky that could be channeled toward novice reduction for gap closure. What are the most impactful initiatives that we have? And so if you look at the puzzle pieces there, they distilled those down into 4 big categories: standards and curriculum support, instruction, continuous improvement and assessment, and environment and support. And so I was on the team for instruction, which was to design and deliver instruction. And there were 4 basic components of that, one of which was the Literacy Design Collaborative. And so you can see that when KDE was thinking about direct support to districts and what KDE recommended as the most high impact strategies or initiatives, LDC was one of those things. And so what happened was we developed resources around all of these different initiatives that any district, whether they were receiving direct support from KDE or from grant projects, whatever, across the state, that they would be able to say, okay, we want to do this, and what kind of guidance is there and what kind of supports and resources are available to help us get that work done. And so that's where these resources for the Novice Reduction for Gap Closure page were developed and why they were developed. So you can see there what the website looks like, and I want to encourage you all to explore that on KDE's website. There are links in this PowerPoint, and I'm assuming, Barb, that you'll share this later on, but there are links so that you can go in and kind of explore. But I do want to just mention that these resources are constantly changing and being updated so that districts have the most current information and the best access to the resources that we have. And you know, I'm sure that you all know that Kelly Philbeck is our resident expert on all things LDC, and so she has been extremely instrumental in developing the resources that are available here on the page. And I just want to mention before I turn it over to Kelly that the Novice Reduction page, or the Novice Reduction website, we've had a really delicate balancing act about how much and what to include, because in Kentucky there are so many LDC resources that we wanted to be sure that what people saw were the most helpful and that we didn't have so much there that would be distracting. And so the more you dig into these resources, the more you find there's just a wealth of information here and opportunity here. So I'll turn it over to Kelly now. She's going to kind of talk through what's there in the LDC resources, and especially the 30, 60, 90-day plan.
I think we had a question first about the term novice reduction. Robin, is that a term used only in this context?
I'm not sure that I understand exactly. I'm not sure I understand exactly what the question is, but I will say this, that in Kentucky, our assessment categories are novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished. And so novice reduction has always been a phrase that we used in Kentucky about how to move students from that lowest scoring category. But we also wanted to include that with gap closure for our students who are most at risk or who fall into some of those subgroups where, you know, you sometimes see issues in performance. And so that was kind of just to roll those two things into one, novice reduction for gap closure. I hope I answered the question.
No, I think that makes sense, Robin, and I think every state has their own terminology, but you're talking again about closing gaps for different groups of students, and you're talking about in your quartiles, your most struggling quartile for is novice.
Yes, and one other comment that I wanted to make about this is that Kentucky has really tried to consistently emphasize that when we talk about our at-risk students or even our struggling students, that a priority that we have is in core instruction, not so much in interventions, because when you think about that RTI pyramid, that sometimes ours are upside down, and so we have really tried to emphasize that all students having access to high quality core instruction is where we think the magic happens, and so with LDC, that's particularly important.
And so Barb, if we can go ahead and move into the next slide, actually looking at that 30 and 60/90 plan. And I believe it's also available in the community folder if you want to see a live copy of it, but we just kind of created some slides just to show you some of the main points. There we go. So we really wanted our schools and districts to have the opportunity to set a goal with LDC and really see, if you were going to be able to implement, teaching your teachers about LDC and implementing that in your school, what would those goals be and what would an actionable plan be, in staged steps to really coach teachers to success. And so one of our first stages, we look at the first 30 days, and that really has each district to go using the 30, 60, 90 plan to really go through and, sort of determine those signs of success. What are they going to know? What are they going to do to show that they're successful with beginning implementation of LDC? And so that section revolves around really identifying a leadership team, making sure that leadership team is well versed in LDC, and that they are, targeting an action plan of the teacher group that they want to, start launching LDC with in their school. And so we're really looking at, a process of learning in that 30 days about learning about LDC, getting those teachers in place, and then moving on to really thinking about, what are those next steps going to be as we go through the plan. So on our next slide, we look at some of those action strategies, really thinking about, who's going to be on point, who are we going to make sure, what's our timeline going to be, and also, how is progress going to be communicated. And so in this section, we really have our teams go through and look at, the guidebook, rules of the road, literacy matters, working with the mini courses, which we are very happy to have, and then also some face-to-face training if they prefer to go that route. And so we have our effectiveness coaches that work with our instructional transformation districts, and then we also have I provide support just across the state to different districts wanting information and training and workshops with LDC. And so then we move on to our 60 days, and we're really looking at that point of getting that plan communicated and starting the training of the teacher groups that are really going to be working with LDC. We look at, introducing modules and mini tasks, and making sure those tasks are aligned with those standards that are essential to the discipline. And so the 60 days, we want to make sure that, teachers are starting to write tasks they've learned about LDC, and they're starting to really build that professional learning to where they can, use those modules and mini tasks in their classroom. And so at our 90-day stage, we look at actually implementing a module and providing, lots of support to those teachers implementing modules as they're going through, and kind of creating those, using our LDC experts as support. And so those may be our effectiveness coaches, it may be district personnel, teacher leaders within the school, but providing that support where there's lots of success with LDC. After we look at that, our next steps, we really move into then, after the module is taught, analyzing student work and revising instructional ladders based upon that student work, and really seeing how LDC can fit in, the bigger picture. So how can, the LDC modules fit into different units? How can they fit into pacing guides? And really working on building that sustainability across the district so LDC, gets traction and is continued to be used.
I'd just like to open it up to everybody. When I saw this, I thought it was Christmas. And Kelly and Robin, mentioned in a very matter-of-fact way, but being able to see a progression here, I think is very exciting. In our final time here, any burning questions or comments for Kelly or Robin? I know that you're going to be printing, downloading, and digging into these resources. What I hope is, just like Amy and Jayla mentioned, good timing. I'm hoping that these resources are good timing for everyone. One other that I'd really like to share with you today, it is through the work that's happening with I3. I'm going to pull up a document and turn it over to Jamie Craig to introduce her colleague and to talk a little bit about a resource that you can use. And we will also add an additional version of this to our files for you, like a non-I3 version, but we thought it would be helpful for you to see this New York customized resource.
Sure. So, hi everyone.
Jamie.
Great. Yeah. So we're back with some I3 information. This is kind of to show you what we're using to support those principals and the school leaders who are doing the I3 work. So just as Amy mentioned, how important it is to focus on them, especially at the start of the year. So because the implementing the I3 work is elective, and it's something that schools choose to do as part of a grant, it's kind of a super duper accelerated version of the 30-day part of Kelly and Robin's 30, 60, 90 day. So it's really just a guide for a conversation or two to have with principals who often are sort of at zero in terms of their understanding of and obviously implementation of LDC. And so I want to introduce you to Luis Nazario. He's the LDC specialist with the Office of Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Learning at the New York City Department of Education. And he's just going to walk you through a couple of parts, not this whole document, but a few key parts of it that mostly he and I sometimes use to have these conversations with school leaders at the start of the work. So, Luis, are you there?
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. So that first document is something that really grabs the principal's attention, because here in Manhattan, but in New York City, we serve multiple masters. We serve the state, we serve the city, and everybody's looking at different things. And so sometimes when a principal gets too much information at once, they can't fix one thing well. So what we have is conversation starter here with the Danielson competencies, so we can talk about what's going on in the classrooms, and then the quality review indicators. Schools get quality reviews here in the city, and it's kind of like an audit. They come in, they observe classes, they talk to teacher teams, they observe teacher teams, they talk to students and parents and principals, and then they make some decisions based on what they see in the instructional core, the school culture, and structures for improvement. So this is something that starts a conversation with the principal because they've had a quality review. In fact, we have an appointment with the principal the day after his quality review. And it'll kind of drive the conversation about what he thinks LDC can fix in his school. And the next page is when, let's say he got dinged on assessment or curriculum or not having collaborative teachers, then this is something that he'd go through or she'd go through and decide what's the most important thing that LDC can help with. And then they need a little guidance in the conversation, because sometimes with a lot of initiatives, it feels like I can't take something else on. But they need to have the conversation so that you can see where this meshes with other things that you're already doing. So this is something that really, really helps, because as a school administrator, I've given professional development on backwards design. I've done PD on UDL. I've done PD on all kinds of things. And I go into the classroom and it's a hot mess. And I know I've given the PD. So this is a great tool for principals, for their teachers who aren't getting the backwards design stuff. And a lot of schools say our focus is literacy or writing across the curriculum, but there's no structures and no support for the teachers. The next page is about the project liaison, because it's very important that the project liaison is strong, especially if a school is coming out of a year where they had a weak project liaison, or a project liaison couldn't devote the time. As a principal, you can't do that kind of work and say that every Thursday, 5th period, nothing's going to happen. So they really need to pick a very strong person and identify those leadership skills that they need in that person for their team. And then determining how they're going to do the teams in the school. Is it going to be a grade team? Is it going to be a subject team? Is it going to be the whole school? Is it going to be just a select group of teachers in select departments? And this is a document where the principal now decides what the model is going to look like for their school, because some areas that they're going to need based on their needs assessment beforehand will fit into different categories in these columns. And then do you have the benchmarks?
Yeah.
This is something that really speaks to one of the most important things that schools have to make up in the city is a comprehensive educational plan. And so that's kind of like a blueprint where you set goals and benchmarks, and the whole thing about it is that, are your goals realistic? Are you checking in on them regularly? Are you modifying your systems? Are you doing things to kind of meet with success? And so this is something that planning these benchmarks and then getting them kind of organized helps set that frame of mind, so that the team goes in, knows what they're doing, knows what they're looking for, and knows what the timelines are.
And Barb, I think you have a little older version here. This one's fine to link for everybody, but if you don't mind, I'll do a screen share really just to show the last piece, because that Lewis wanted to talk about. So that's the teacher work plan, and all that stuff is there if you want to look at the details. But I know that Lewis wanted to share also, as the district support for the principals, he does these visits. And so Lewis, I can drive if you want to kind of talk through these.
Sure. So, the schools get 3 visits per year, and it's a visit with like 4 parts. So it's a meeting with the principal to find out how everything's going with the LDC work, a meeting with the project liaison to find out how that's going with the team, and to give them some feedback on how they run a PLC. Some of these teacher leaders are a little skittish because they don't want to seem like they're bossing their colleagues around. So there's a lot of kind of coaching and stroking that they need. Attending an LDC PLC meeting just to see how everything goes and what it looks like in the school, because it looks a little different in different schools. And then a walkthrough to visit the classroom and see what kind of work the teachers are doing with the kids, and see what kind of evidence there is that the work is being done. Is there work posted? Are there things around the room that let you know that they've been working on the LDC in their classroom? And so these meetings, as we go along, it's kind of, the first meeting is to see how everything's going, set the people up. It's, to get everything running. Then the training wheels come off, and the second and third meeting are to kind of talk about and troubleshoot. And where are there issues that need to be addressed?
I just have to say a big thank you. I know that a lot of you, and I see heads nodding, that's the nice thing about Zoom. As you're talking, Lewis, there are people sitting there nodding their heads as you talk. So you can't see that when you're screen sharing, but Lewis is one of our newest members of the LDC community, and what a valuable contribution you've made today, hearing from you how you're using this conversationally, what's really resonating with principals, because again, that's what we're trying to really do, support those school leaders. And again, folks, our I3 team would love to hear from you, because we're all doing similar work and trying to create tools to support. Now, I know that we are really just about out of time, but I just have to share the screen for just about 2-3 minutes. I understand if folks need to drop off. I'm actually glad that we're out of time and still have agenda, because there's been just so many great ideas shared here today. But I did want to let you know just real briefly about one thing that is happening in terms of supports. This whole meeting has been about sustaining and growing the work that we do. And one of the things that we're really working on is supporting coaches in the field who are implementing LDC. Some of those are coaches who are working in Lewis's school. Some of these folks are working in Colorado, Arkansas, Alabama, and other places around the country. They're implementing LDC using the online courses. But we found that the coaches really needed a community of support to help build their skills and to share their experiences. So what we've done is pull together, and I would invite Suzanne Simons also to chime in. We'll get Connie Eccles from Arkansas is one of the coaches. We pulled together a briskly paced 8-week course that really supports coaches in supporting hybrid implementations of LDC using the courses. So what we've done in the teaching channel is use that as a collaboration platform, created basically a lesson plan, a multi-tiered lesson plan that invites the coaches to jump in, to reflect on moments of taking the course themselves as a learner, to unpack that content and think about how they could use it in their own coaching. We're literally just 2-3 weeks into this. And so I'd just like Connie to talk a little bit about early lessons learned, and then we're going to talk more about this next month as we look at the data and work that we're thinking about with it. Connie?
Thanks for having me, Barb. I have a few things I'd like to share. My first initial goal in joining the Cohort 1, the Deep Dive series, was to learn, to gain access to a network of peers and mentors. And thankfully, that is exactly what is happening. Similar to, reading a good book. The first thing you want to do is talk to someone else who's read it. And so I envisioned a boost in my own learning, my own understanding of LDC, my coaching skills, and that's what's happening. I was a little intimidated at first. The audience around the nation, no, not that anyone made it intimidating. I was just a little overwhelmed to be part of this group. But I've become a little more comfortable now. I'm so excited to be able to collaborate on a weekly basis in writing as well as in our, I call it, our virtual face-to-face PLC every Thursday evening. I'm excited to have met a lot of the people that I'm getting to learn from and continuing to collaborate with them. When people share experiences, everybody wins. No two experiences are the same. The person who's sharing it wins. The people who are hearing it wins. Just, the same thing about what's happening now. I am loving the asynchronous opportunity. I get to decide when I get to give the best me. And so I'm really enjoying that part of it, as well as the face-to-face set time every week too. This type of venue just has a lot of accountability too. It's not about prepping for a quiz. I want to be prepared every week. I want to be able to understand what's being said and converse about it. Join this intellectual conversation about LDC and coaching in general. And so the accountability is just that comes with that intrinsic learning stance that we all kind of share. Revisiting all of the online courses has deepened my understanding of LDC in general, and my confidence has been boosted already, just 3 weeks into it.
Connie, thank you so much. And folks, I know we're over time, but I wanted you to be able to hear a little bit about what we're working on, because we started this with a small group of coaches, knowing that every resource that's being created are things that are going to be shareable, usable. We're going to learn a lot from this that can support everyone. And one of the things I think we've learned too is how much support coaches need. And I think you could see that this offers a nice national community. Kimber Rael, people know her from Colorado's, along with our team, is helping to facilitate. It's a nice cross-section of coaches who completed course 1 before doing this, weekly revisit the courses and think about them for their own coaching lens and through their lens as a learner, and then get together for an hour and chat online in a structured way using these conversation posts. Again, knowing that we're over time, I'm going to go ahead and wrap, and I'm going to bring back the topic of celebrations to our next meeting. There are some golden resources in this meeting we didn't get to today, and I'm going to follow up with you about those and make them first on our list next time. We've been really underway with our marketing capacity grant, and I will send everybody who attended this call just a message about what's here and why it's here, and then I'll make that more of a formal discussion next time. So 2 things we didn't get to, first time that's ever happened, but I think it's a good thing. So I want to thank everybody. I always hang around for a few minutes if there's anybody who'd like to share or chat. And this hybrid course was the brainchild of Suzanne, so also here to pick, please feel free to stay and pick her brain. We are officially ended, and thank you.